Hello, friend. This is Ryan Hicks of TalkToProfit.com, and this is another Reseller Friday. And today I'm going to talk about something that's kind of got people up in arms, and it's a new, well, not really necessarily new, but it's something people are recognizing now, and it's about eBay's bad buyer experience rate. I'll put a link in the description to the actual policy so you can read it. And to be clear, this is on eBay exports page. It doesn't even apply to US sellers, who are the main ones whining and complaining about it right now. But let's treat it as if it does apply to US sellers, because a lot of times they start things off in like South Asia, like this one is, and it eventually comes over to the eBay US site. So let's pretend like it is. The reality is a lot of these things are good, and they're going to weed out bad sellers, and they're going to hopefully make good sellers even better by requiring them to live up to a higher standard. But one of the things to state from the beginning is there's nothing in here that's bad for sellers. It's bad for bad sellers, but sellers who are getting up in arms over this. Now, I've seen people, literally seen people say, well, it's time to leave eBay. I'm glad Poshmark is still around. Just all this nonsense about how they're leaving eBay now because eBay is going to require sellers be better. Really? That's your idea? Is that eBay's not going to let you just be lazy and ship late and not describe things properly? So you're going to leave and go to another platform? You think those other platforms are going to put up with that either? Of course not. But let's go into this policy. This is the bad buyer experience rate. The evaluation metrics are significantly not as described. A buyer returned an item and gave a return reason that indicates the item is not as described, including does not work, defective, doesn't match photos or description, wrong item sent, missing parts or pieces, arrived damaged, doesn't seem authentic, doesn't fit my vehicle. The second thing is out of stock cancellations. A seller canceled a transaction because they no longer had the item, or the item was never shipped, or the buyer's money was returned. Low detailed seller rating. A buyer left a detailed seller rating score of 1, 2, or 3 for an item as described. Or the last one, neutral or negative feedback. A buyer left neutral or negative feedback for a seller. A transaction is considered a BBE, bad buyer experience, transaction when any of the above happens, and one transaction will only be evaluated once. Which means if you have all 4 of these problems in one transaction, it's only considering one of those against your account. You're not going to have 4 different strikes against your account. The BBE rate is defined as a percentage of BBE transactions out of all transactions in the evaluation window. Now, what sellers have been saying is, well, the buyers will leave false INADs and then we'll get our account suspended because of buyers' problems. But that's not how it's going. What it actually says is it's comparing your BBE, your bad buyer experience rate, with the peer market average. So if on average buyers are filing false INADs and they are causing problems for sellers' accounts, they're claiming an item's not as described when it was, they're claiming it was damaged when it wasn't, whatever. That's going to be kind of universal across the board. So your peer market is what you're going to be compared with. Not some presumption of 0 of these, because eBay knows there's bad buyers. Not all buyers, but there are some bad buyers. So as long as you stay above that, which all you got to do is be good. Just ship the item, describe it properly. Don't try to trick people and say it didn't have a flaw if it did. Just be honest. Ship the item quickly. Have the item in stock. So that really should be a concern for people who are drop shipping. You shouldn't be drop shipping this day and age on eBay and platforms like that don't like drop shipping. There's too many potential problems for that. In the past, it was all right. In the past, it worked. You can't do that today, at least on some of these platforms. You can do it on your own site or whatever you want to do. But how hard is it to be above the peer market average? It's not difficult. Look at what is expected of you. I mean, some of the rates that are allowed are so minimal that it's hard to believe people even, like one of them is you can't have 2 or more, you can't have more than 2 cases closed out seller resolution. How hard is that? Just respond to your cases and handle them properly. And you can still have 1 of those or even 2 of those and be all right. So the standards aren't just astronomical, like you got to be perfect and all your customers have to be perfect. The standards aren't super high. They do expect you to perform well and to give the customer a good experience, but the standards are not ridiculous. And people getting up in arms and talking about how they're leaving eBay now and they're going to Poshmark or going to Macari or going to wherever, that's all right. You can go wherever you want. But if you haven't dealt with the problems that make you run away from one platform because they are requiring better results from you, you're just dragging those same problems to another platform, and that platform is going to follow suit. You think these platforms want customers to have a bad experience? Of course not. So this is going to be going with all platforms. They're all going to tweak and make sure the sellers are doing the best they can do because they want the customers to have a good experience. And here's the thing. You should want the customer to have a good experience. You shouldn't want your customer to have a bad experience. You shouldn't want your customer to experience problems and an item not as described. And yes, I know there are buyers who will claim item not as described because they think they have to lie to get a free return. I get that. But if you're providing good customer service, you're describing things properly, you have a good customer experience where you're trying to give them the best experience possible, like having free returns. I can't tell you how many sellers whine and say, I don't want to offer free returns. Here's the thing. If you don't offer free returns, you still have to pay for a return if a buyer claims it's not as described. And so if they can't get a free return, what do you think they're going to do? Some of those buyers are going to claim it's not as described. And that's a very subjective thing too. They'll say, this is not what I wanted, so it's not as described. And then you still have to pay for the return. But not only do you got a return now that you have to pay for, you now have an INAT against your account where otherwise the customer may have chosen, don't want anymore. Or they may have chosen a return reason that is not going to affect your account negatively. But because you didn't provide the best customer experience, you didn't offer free returns, you led to that customer doing what they had to do, they thought they had to do, which is be dishonest, to get a free return, to push and force a free return. All these things just go back to you need to provide the best customer experience possible. eBay's bad buyer experience policy is not anything to harm a good seller. And other platforms ramping up their expectations for sellers is not bad. It's not against you. One of the best things it'll do is it'll weed out these bad sellers who are providing bad customer experiences. Because listen, if you're on these platforms, these customers have a bad experience, lots of times they don't come back. That means less customers to buy your products as well. And so the more sellers out there providing a bad buyer experience, the less buyers will be on the platform. And that hurts you as a seller, as a good seller. So these kind of things should be taken as a good thing. Now, I know some people are whining about, well, you know, the neutral or negative feedback, now that's counting against us, and most people don't leave neutral or negative. And if the negative is left, oftentimes you can get it removed, and you can get the neutral removed. There are people talking today, oh, you know, it's so hard to get negatives removed. No, it's not. Not if you have a track record that's good, and not if you had things open to them like free returns. They open a return, they never send it back, they leave you a negative because you didn't give them their money back or whatever, because they never returned the item. That negative can be removed easily. So this is one of those things where it's just people who are not good sellers and have no intention of being a good seller. I looked at this and thought, good, this will get rid of a lot of bad sellers. Bad sellers were looking at this and going, oh no, this is awful. I'm being held to a higher standard now. I can't do that. I got to go to a different platform. As if the different platform is not going to require good customer experience as well. Of course they are. And if they don't have it spelled out on the other platform yet about the good buyer experience they want, they will eventually. You think these platforms don't see what other platforms are doing and take note and make adjustments themselves to make their platform as good as possible? Of course they do. But here's one of the things I always go back to. You need to provide the best customer experience you can. If you're doing that, if you're legitimately doing that, you know in your heart you're trying to provide the best experience for the customer, things like this that pop up aren't going to make you whine and complain. They aren't going to make you go run away to another platform as if you're going to run away from your bad customer experience you're providing because you're just going to do it on another platform and get banned from there. Just do the best you can. Legitimately try to provide the best customer experience. That is what all business requires today when you're selling to customers. When you're selling to consumers, you have to provide the best experience. Gone are the days where you can just get by with sending somebody some junk that they didn't want, or it's not what you described it as, and get away with it. You can't do that. And I would hope you don't want to do that. I would hope you want to provide the best experience for your customer. Now on to a different issue of people, resellers whining and complaining. It is the market changing. Now, I'm of the belief, if you watched any of my other videos, you know this, that we create our own markets. We create our own economies. But for the average seller out there, they're looking at the market, they're thinking things are bad, they're not adjusting and adapting with things. You know, if you see it's going to rain and you're a farmer, maybe you don't plant your seeds that day so they don't get washed away. You just take some basic common sense approach to your business and to how you do things, and you'll be all right. The market has been changing for years, and sellers have not been adapting to the fact that the market is moving away from some of these lower sell-through rate items. All the marketplaces are pushing them less. They'll sell slower, and even slower than they used to. And yet sellers are still trying to sell the same things that have been dwindling in sales over the years, with an uptick in sellers selling the same items. So you have less buyers wanting that item, more sellers selling the item. That's going to lead to, obviously, lower prices and less sales. Stop buying those items. It's that simple. Stop buying those items to resell if they aren't doing very well. And for most of these categories, people have years. I was talking to somebody that was selling VHS tapes, and they were complaining about, I have these great VHS tapes and nobody's buying them. It's like, my friend, the market for VHS tapes is going down every single year, and more of them are flooding the market. These are already low demand items, and you top that with more sellers selling the item, the prices are going down, the demand is going down. That's a lose-lose scenario. Stop buying those items unless they're really great items. There are some VHS tapes that are worth money. There are many that aren't. There's still people buying those Disney VHS tapes thinking they're worth thousands of dollars, and they're worth $8, $5 maybe, with free shipping. We have to adapt and grow in our business. We have to learn, see what the market's doing, see what the demand is, and make the pivots we need to make to get the best results. You can't blame the platforms. You can't blame the economy. You can't blame the customers for not wanting to buy your garbage. The only person you can blame is yourself for not adapting and changing with the times. So my friend, I want to encourage you. Things are looking up for sellers. They're not looking down. Things are not bad. Things are going great. And they can go great for you if you'll just take a few steps to make your life as a reseller great. Have a positive mental attitude. Focus on the best. Only focus on things that are lovely and of good report. Literally pray and focus on what good things can I buy to sell and provide a good experience for my customers. I've talked to believers who are resellers, and they'll go and find nothing in a thrift store, and I'll go in and I'll have my cart full, and they'll go, how'd you do that? Well, very simply, I prayed before I went in there. I didn't go in there expecting to find nothing, which they did. They went in there expecting the worst. They got the worst. And listen, if you're not a person following Jesus and you say, well, oh, that nonsense of prayer or whatever. Listen, it all goes back to your basic biology. Your reticular activating system will filter out good information for you if you're expecting the worst. God set it up that way. There's too much information coming in, so your reticular activating system filters it down to just the information you need. Well, if you expected to go into a thrift store and find nothing, you're going to walk right past blindly almost. Not even able to see good products on the shelves because you've basically programmed yourself for that failure. That's why the scripture tells us to focus on things that are lovely and of good report. To only think about those things. Good things, lovely things. You need to focus on that. And in relation to your customers and providing them a good buyer experience, legitimately look, what would you want as a customer as Jesus taught about doing unto others, you have them do unto you. What would you want to experience as a customer, and provide that experience for your customers? Stop arguing about, well, bad buyers and stuff. You don't have those bad buyers if you're doing a great job. You don't have as many of them, at least. You might have a few. But most of the people who continually have bad buyers are also bad sellers. So it just seems to be kind of interesting that they are, as a bad seller, attracting bad buyers. Maybe eBay knows. They see this buyer has a lot of sellers have reported them for problems. This seller has kind of dwindling metrics and they're not doing very well. And they match those two together. And they send the good buyers that have no problems, no complaints against them, to the good sellers who have good experiences, great feedback, no item not as described, or very minimal negative or neutral feedbacks, great detailed seller ratings, these kind of things. Their algorithm knows what's going, they know hundreds of data points about the buyer, hundreds of data points about the seller, and they match the ones that best match together. So you might want to think about that. Ramp yourself up to that great seller, not just a top-rated seller, but you are the best seller you could possibly be, not just by eBay or Poshmark or Mercari or Depop or any other platform's metrics, but you're trying to do your best in honor to God. When you do that, you're going to attract the best customers. You're going to attract more sales, and you're going to have a great experience as a reseller. My friend, I pray this is a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.